it's really difficult to try to put that aside, the first impression that you have on someone, and try to give them a chance and try to get to know them and try to get to understand what is important for them and how can we work together. And yes, I had my share of different managers, and some of them was not easy to work with.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Perpetual Motion, a podcast focused on lifestyle, self-care, personal empowerment, and positive relationships. I'm your host, Dr. Mo, best-selling author, award-winning podcast host, keynote speaker, and speaker coach. Every episode, I talk to amazing thought leaders from around the globe who educate us with tools and strategies to help us grow as leaders in our homes, communities, and workplaces. And we have so much fun while doing it. So please stick around. And if you're new to the show or a returning visitor, let's make this official. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified weekly when new episodes post. Please, please. My guest today is in Israel. Her name is Limor Bergman. She has been a mentor for women in tech for over 5 years, and she's a former director of engineering. She worked in that male-dominated field for over 20 years and learned a thing or two along the way about career growth and breaking through that glass ceiling. I've got my hammer and I'm ready to learn. Let's do it.
You can't say Dr. Mo ain't tell ya that fear magnifies the consequences of failure. What are you scared of? Why are you afraid? I'd rather live like I'm dying than live to die. Any day, my heart is pure, my soul is safe.
Welcome, Limor. I'm glad you are here.
Hi, Mo. It's a pleasure being here today.
Limor, I know you coach others on career growth, and you're very good at it. But tell us more about your background and what attracted you to engineering. How did this all begin?
Yeah, so it began in high school when I was trying to figure out what I'm good at and what I like. And I was good at math and other science-related fields. And computer science was something that was rising as a good profession to have, well-earning profession. And I tried to take a programming course. It seemed nice. And that's how I kind of decided to go and study computer science.
You just decided? Were you taking other courses that you didn't care for, or?
No, I just tried it and decided that it was a very practical decision. Let's put it that way, because it felt like, okay, it aligns with my strength and it's a good profession.
It is a very good profession with good long-term prospects. And that's key. What you just said aligns with your strengths, because so many times I think people just go after the money or whatever looks sexy, as they say, and then they don't do well at it because they don't actually, it doesn't align with their strengths and their values. So I'm glad you said that. Once you got in, we've already said it was male dominated. Did you find it difficult to find mentors?
The beginning was a little bit challenging. I had my first manager was a female.
Oh, nice.
And she was not very supportive. I mean, actually, it was surprise. It was a surprise, actually. But I was I knew what I wanted and what I didn't want, and I didn't want to continue working with her. So after a year with her, I switched to another team, working on newer technologies, and along the way, I mean, I asked for help from people that I could get their support. I would say my first official mentor was when I started managing, and I felt really lost. I felt like I needed someone who is experienced and who can guide me.
I understand that. I my first position leading people, I was in my early 20s, and I had a team of women in their 40s and 50s and 60s. And I mean, I was maybe 24 and I looked 16, and it was intimidating. But back to what you said about having a female mentor or manager who wasn't supportive. That has happened to so many of us, and it is shocking. We just kind of feel like, oh, a female manager, this is going to be great, girl power, women in STEAM, whatever. And then for reasons unknown, we don't get the support mentoring, encouragement, leadership that we thought. What do you do? I mean, how did you even survive that year? Because some people just quit. How do you navigate that when that's not an option for you?
Yeah, so it was my first job, and I was a student, so I was working part-time, and I knew that I had to kind of finish school,
Mm-hmm.
and they paid for my last year tuition, so I had enough motivation to stick around. But I knew that I wouldn't stay after I finish school. I finished my degree, and yeah, I just I guess maybe it was a combination that I knew what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was only a year. I had a very clear goal in mind. And it was a part-time. So I was there only 50% of the time.
Got it. That would make a difference when there's an end in sight. But for someone who may not, that they've been at it a few years and somebody new comes in, which is often the case, and you lose those previous relationships, if that when you see this is happening, should you set up a meeting and try to have a conversation, or just duck your head and keep going?
I think it depends. I mean, first of all, when you have a new manager comes around, you need to build a relationship with them first without judging and making some assumptions, because we tend to judge people before they even did anything, right? Right or
Yeah,
wrong. We
absolutely.
judge
Right.
them. We make it, we have our own opinion. And it's really difficult to try to put that aside, the first impression that you have on someone,
Mhm.
and try to give them a chance and try to get to know them and try to get to understand what is important for them and how can we work together. And yes, I had my share of different managers, and some of them was not easy to work with. And eventually it depends on what is more important to you. If you find out that this person have different value than you are and you don't want to continue working with them, you have to decide what is the priority for you, either to stay at this position because it's rewarding and it has other benefits, or you want to move either within the company you're at or to a different company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that takes some action on your part. I've seen a lot of people, they just kind of stay in their heads and paralyze themselves when you do have options. It may feel like you don't, but you always have options.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. My field, dentistry, healthcare, has long been dominated as well. And at times, particularly in the early years, I found networking was challenging. And I don't know if it's because the males were concerned about, if I have one-on-ones with this female, or if they just didn't relate to me, or, I mean, like you said, you can't assume, but I found it really, really challenging to network with colleagues and build relationships, even though I was putting the olive branch out there, if you will. Can you give some tips on how to do it, how to network professionally and effectively?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on your personality. For me, I'm relatively introverted, so I remember that I was going to very large events and felt intimidated by the amount of people. But some people like that. Some people like to go to conferences and different like professional conferences that you can have the opportunity to meet with different people worldwide. So if this is something that is aligned with you, definitely do that. I mean, now that we are behind the pandemic, I mean, there are more and more face-to-face events. So definitely try to look for events that are relevant to your field. Another option would be to try to look for some groups virtually, and there are a lot of communities, and try to find those who are aligned to who you are. For example, for women in tech, there are a lot of online communities that you can join. Some are paid, some are free of charge, and you can join and meet others.
Yeah, I love that. We didn't have that option. In fact, I'm in a group now, and it's 3,000 women from all over the country, relating our experiences and our challenges. And look at this case. Can you help? And it's just, I just keep thinking, oh my God, if I just had this when I was younger, this would have been so wonderful. And I also like that you said, in your field, and look for events, because sometimes we feel like it has to be someone at our company, at our location. And while that's nice, it really doesn't have to be someone who works on your team or who's at your company, right?
Yeah, Depends on your goals, right? I mean, if you want to know people within the company because you want maybe to create some connections and advance yourself within the company, definitely try to meet people. And sometimes it's about, I don't know, I mean, going to visit an office that you haven't been into, or reaching out to different people and asking if they are free for some meet and greet. So people usually are open to that.
They really are. It's surprising. Even I've reached out to people on LinkedIn because they posted something. And I was like, oh, okay, we got something in common. I want to know more about this. And also, if they say no, right, it doesn't harm you or anything. People are busy. You can't assume that it's about you.
Absolutely. And some people, they don't want to, or they don't have time, and that's fine. What I would advise is to try to do it really without any agenda. Because one of the things that I hate the most is when people reach out to me and immediately they want to sell me something, or they want something from me. And when you're reaching out cold to someone you don't know, the worst thing you can do is immediately after you connect with them, or if you are able to meet with them, to try to sell them something.
That's a really good point. And there are a lot of people doing LinkedIn, courses and stuff. And that's one of the things they're telling people is just reach out strictly for that purpose. And then automatically, here's my service. And I get that a lot. And it just really turns me off big time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know you. I don't mind helping, but what a way to come at somebody. And it's kind of sneaky too, because it starts out with hey, I just want to connect, like you said. And then the next thing is, okay, I want to sell you something, coach you something, show you something. I don't care for it. It must work. So many people do it, but I don't think it's a good way to build a network. Well, we're talking about women in engineering, women in male-dominated professions, and I know you coach women on career progression, and that all speaks to diversity and inclusion, which isn't just, gender, it's age, it's ethnicity. And everybody's talking about it now. That's a hashtag on everything, DNI, but implementing it is not clear. How can companies build an inclusive culture legitimately?
Yeah. Talking and doing are two very different things, right? I mean, companies like to talk about it, but doing is much harder. Personally, I think it starts from the top. And I want to see more diversity in the top, the C-suite, the board.
Yes.
And not just women, as you mentioned, people of color, people from different backgrounds, ethnicity groups. So I think it's being intentional about it and wanting to see other people. What happens a lot, and I've seen that in several companies, they talk about, we are inclusive, we are diverse, but eventually a new CEO comes in and brings all his buddies. And they're all white men from the same kind of club.
Same school, same club, same previous company. Coaches even do it. They take over new teams.
That's gives a very strong message that talking is one thing, but actions are showing otherwise. So I think it starts from the top, and then the more you have diversity, eventually it will bubble down. You also need to make sure that you are sensitive to people from different backgrounds, different ethnicity groups, and also gender, and make sure you really notice them and what is important for them. And one of the challenges that we have is that we treat people like we think we should be treated. And it's not always the case. It doesn't always work as well. And when you have a diverse team in the leadership level, it will be easier because you'll have different perspectives. And you can set up the different norms of the company of how people should be treated and how you interview, for example, what kind of questions you ask. This is just an example. Like, for example, I was against having more than one person interview because I thought it's very intimidating. And maybe for white men, it's okay when 2 people or 3 people interview a person and they interrogate the person and it will be considered okay. But think about a woman that wants to interview for a role and then 3 white men interview her and interrogate her. How will she feel? So it's things like that.
So in terms of, let's explore that a little bit, because that's very common for companies where they feel like they need, this candidate needs to meet with different department heads or different members of the team, would you recommend that they do it one at a time then, as opposed to the panel group style interview?
I prefer that if it's possible. And if you want them to meet different people, there are other ways to do that. If it's possible to bring someone to the office, and then maybe they can have lunch with some people, just have a coffee break. There could be other opportunities for them to meet other people other than sitting in a panel interview. Personally, I'm not for it.
Got it. Yeah, that can be intimidating, whether you're defending your dissertation or trying to get a position, just looking up and they're all looking at you. And it really does make you anxious. And there are, that's the thing, adopting better ways to do things when you understand perception, other people's perception. Good stuff. What about getting a promotion at work? So you get in the door and your values are aligned and you like what you're doing, you have the tools that you need, but then you're there a while and it doesn't seem like, there's any progression or any growth. Can you tell us the best way to make that happen? How you present your case? Who do you talk to? What do you do?
I think one of the things is to don't be afraid to say what you want. What's your career aspirations? A lot of times we have our own goals, but we don't tell that to our manager or to the HR business partner. So how would they know what is important for us and what do we want? The other thing is being proactive and not expect anyone to notice what you're doing and to hand it over to you. Rather than, okay, I want to see a plan for how I can grow, what is missing, what are the things that I need to do differently, what are the things you expect me to do so I can get to the next level. So take charge.
So your career plan should be collaborative, not just something you have in your head or in your desk, and then share that with your manager, get feedback so that you can execute it.
Yeah, and the responsibility is both on you and your manager and the HR business partner. It's a shared responsibility. Your manager is responsible for that. And I've seen managers that kind of, don't take any part of that, and they should.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. And then when people quit, they'll just be like, well, I didn't know you wanted to advance. Right there, baseline, who doesn't? Very few people don't want to advance. So leadership out there, just so you know, even if you haven't heard from them, most people want to progress in the career, and it's better for the company. When I see, wherever it is, people getting promoted, particularly internally, it's inspiring. It is really inspiring for other people on the team. You kind of talked about a career plan. What do you tell your clients about building one on their side? I know you said it needs to be collaborative, but how do you even start? Do you need to kind of map it out before you go to your manager, or what are the steps to do that? Because that's not something they really teach us in school for the most part.
Yeah. I think, first of all, it's for them to realize what they actually want. And you'll be surprised, and it happened to me too at some point in my career, that sometimes we get to a spot that we haven't planned to get. We are reactive, and somehow we got to a certain place. So asking yourself, what do you really want? What is important for you? And also what utilizes best your strength and the value that you bring, and your passions as well. Okay. Once you realize what you want, then you can go and talk with your manager and figure out what's the feasible way to get there, if there is. Obviously each company has some limitations. Mm-hmm. But even if the specific company you work at, maybe there is not a foreseen opportunity, if you know what you want, the next step would be to figure out what are the gaps, what are the skills that you need to develop or to improve. And then you can work on those things and find opportunities to improve those skills. So either at the current company you work at, you'll get to the next level, or maybe someplace else.
And a lot of companies do offer, when you talk about obtaining the skills you may be lacking, so many companies offer tuition reimbursement, or internally they may have a program online for courses. And I am surprised at the number of people who don't take advantage of that, even though they're aware of it.
Because it takes time and effort.
There's that part. There's that part. You are right about that. Or the other one I've seen with my younger dental colleagues is that they don't realize the value of it. It's just like it's not going to make any difference. But investing in your professional growth always makes a difference. If not now, then later. Do you have any additional advice back to women in the workplace across the board? For someone who feels like they really have a lot of ambition, they've tried to do all of these things, they're listening right now going, I've done that, but they won't let me get past this glass ceiling. They feel like it's pinning them down, they're suffocating, not supported by management, and basically hate their jobs. And I ask this because I hear it so much from people offline and online expressing these sentiments that they want to be at the company, but they're not moving anywhere, and the manager doesn't like them, and they're so unhappy. I know we've discussed it a little bit, but do you have any advice for people like that? Because emotionally, that's a bad place to be.
Yeah, definitely, it's a bad place to be. And if there's something between them and their manager, maybe the manager has a bias against them, which can happen. Is there are several options. I mean, either to build a network and connections in the company and find someplace else, find some advocates for them either in other places in the organization, or to look elsewhere. Maybe they reach the end of the road in the specific company. Again, it depends, about the manager. If they really feel like they've done everything they could, they talked openly, they heard the manager and what the manager thought they should work on. And if they feel like there's a bias against them, then, I mean, I would say they can also involve HR, but it's usually not the right way, right? You don't want to force someone to promote you, but you can try to find other people in the company that maybe believes in you, and you can potentially move.
And right now, in regards to potentially, moving departments, if you're at a small company, of course, you don't have that option. But I think a lot of people are afraid right now too, because there've been so many layoffs. Meta, Facebook, Amazon, everybody is laying off right and left. So in this scenario that I want to present, if you really do need to stay there right now, because there's not a lot of opportunities. I mean, you can still be looking, but for right now, you kind of need to stay there for your insurance or whatever it is. In addition to, investing in yourself with courses and networking, is it a good idea to find even maybe, I'm thinking about an outlet, find a side passion that allows you to do some things that uplift you, even if it's coaching or whatever, or just stay the course and hope things get better? I think I'm just thinking, what are some things they can do if they can't leave so they don't go freaking crazy?
Yeah, definitely taking care of themselves emotionally is important. Obviously it depends. I believe in physical activity. I think it's a great thing to do something active. For every person, that may be something else. Some people go dancing. I like running. Some people, like hiking, whatever. I mean, get outside and do something, move your body. And the second thing is try to detach emotions as much as possible from how you feel about your manager, assuming there is some bad blood between you, and do your job and keep buffers as much as possible. I mean, I know it's not easy always. A lot of times we tend to try to be right, but it's not the best way for us. And maybe if the manager is disagreeing or argumentative or someone who wouldn't listen, then maybe instead of fighting and arguing with them, maybe just, try to focus on other things that you can make an impact on. And try to, as much as possible, to not react emotionally, because it's never a good thing for you.
You're right. And to flip the switch, I know a lot of the people that you coach are executives, and there are really a lot of great managers and leaders out there. There's some people who have been promoted and didn't necessarily get all the skills, all the training that they need for their position. We see that a lot. But if you're a manager and you've got an employee that seems promising, but they seem like they've got a problem, they've got an attitude, they're not getting along with the other team members or whatever, is it a good idea to bring them in and try to have this discussion, even if they haven't asked for it? What is it that you want here? If you have an employee that seems a little disgruntled, but you can also see that they have a lot of potential skills, they add value to the team, would you recommend that you just kind of, as a manager, wait and hope they get better? Or would you bring them in and say, hey, let's talk, what's going on?
I definitely believe in open communication and continuous communication and continuous feedback, not to wait until the annual performance reviews to share feedback, but you have to adjust your feedback based on the person and how they are able to accept feedback. Some people have to be treated very, very empathetically and gently, and some people can just, you can just tell them directly. So I would advise to tell the feedback on time and try to find opportunities to help that people grow, but be sensitive. And
if they're not an emotionally intelligent individual, how do they tell the difference between kid gloves and a kick in the rear? Let's do it.
If they don't know,
right,
then I would say be careful and try to be more cautious, I would say. But you can also ask them. You can ask your people, if I have feedback for you, how do you prefer that we'll discuss it?
Bingo.
Some people may say, yeah, just tell me. I can handle it. Some people may say something else. So ask them.
Right. That's great. That's worth the price of admission right there. Every episode, I want something that's worth the price of admission. And I think, even though that would seem obvious, that's the last thing a lot of people think is, why don't I just ask? Whether it's personal relationships or professional, there's so much going on in our heads that we're just making stuff up, like you said, and assuming, when you could just say, hey, this is what I would like to do, is the best way. I love it. Before we go, Limor, this has been awesome. Lots of great tips for folks in leaderships and folks on teams, which is always my objective across the board, strategies and tips to help you grow personally and professionally. Can you tell us more about your services, what you're doing now, why you started doing that, and how to get in touch with you?
Definitely. So it was a process that I went through. I started mentoring in 2017 and found out that I love it and I'm very good at it, and I'm helping other managers. And that, alongside with my passion for having more women in tech, which I tried to make an impact when I was a director, I felt like, okay, why don't I just focus on that and coach? So I left. I started coaching, training, and what I do mostly is coaching women in tech leadership. That's what I do. I also do other things like group coaching and also different workshops like presentation skills workshops or leadership-related workshops, or even helping companies with running internal mentoring programs. And I really enjoy it. I enjoy the impact I'm able to make. Every woman that I'm able to help, even if it's a small thing, gives me a lot of joy and fulfillment. And as for your question, how people can reach out, just go to LinkedIn and look for me, Limor Bergman on LinkedIn, and you'll find me. You'll see what I'm doing. You'll hear me out. You'll see some videos. I think that's the best way to connect.
Absolutely. And you've got some great videos too. I had an
opportunity to
see a couple of them. Your website is nice. And we'll drop all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Limor, for this great advice. And thank you, listeners. I'll add Limor's information to the show notes. And while you're online, please visit my website at drmoanderson.com to learn more about my books and public speaking coaching services. I'll be back next week, and I hope you will also. Thanks again, Limor.
Thank you.